Hello, my name's Phoebe, and this video is a guide for how to draw your hand. I'll be talking through step by step and breaking it down, and you can draw along with me and maybe pause if you need a bit more time at any step. Hopefully it'll be broken down so it's really easy to understand and follow. But having said that, hands are known as being difficult to draw, so it's a nice challenge, and it also means that you have to concentrate a bit. And I find that really relaxing because I can just focus in on the drawing and a chance to pause and just do that. The great thing about this exercise is that it's just using basic arts material. All you need is some paper, and so long as it's the same size as your hand or larger, that's great. A pencil and a rubber. And you want to find somewhere you can sit comfortably and have your hand next to the paper where you're going to draw. So yeah, I hope you really enjoy it. As you get yourself set up, I thought I'd share this example of a drawing of a hand. This is by the illustrator Lucinda Rogers, who recently broke her wrist and then has been capturing the recovery and having to wear a cast through drawing it. And I think although it wasn't her drawing hand that was injured, it just shows the exact moment of time, how important that hand is to her. Now she's having to struggle with doing all day-to-day activities just one-handed, and how you suddenly realise how much your non-dominant hand helps you out in day-to-day life. So she'll always know, looking at this drawing, exactly when it was and what she was thinking. You might want to do a bit more of a celebration in your drawing. You might want to choose, if you've got a favourite ring or watch, you might want to put that on for the drawing and include that. Or you could even think about what your hand's going to be on top of, if you want to put it on a cushion you like or a bit of fabric. So the first thing we're going to do before we start drawing is just practice some mark making with your pencil. I've got a 4B pencil, which is really nice for drawing because it gives a good range of light and dark marks, but you can use any pencil. But at this stage, you just want to practice what are the lightest marks you can make and what are some of the darkest marks you can make, kind of getting familiar with it. And we're going to start with lots of light drawing, so getting confident with just making very pale marks is going to be a helpful thing. And you see that if you put your pencil flatter and use the side of it, you can get thicker lines, and if you press down hard, you can get a nice dark line. So yeah, you can just use it, do it with doodle at the bottom of your page, or you can use a different bit of paper. You can see what happens when you do hash marks. And just to finish with, really practicing light marks, so drawing straight lines, drawing some curves. Okay, so good to go. And now you put your hand in a comfortable position. We'll be here for a while, so make sure that you can hold the position comfortably. And you want to line it up so it's about halfway on your page, so the top of the hand doesn't go off the top of your page. And the good thing about having it right next to the page is that you can kind of just reference, okay, that finger needs to go about there and the bottom of the hand goes about there. So now we've got our hand in position, have a good look, and there's a few things we want to look out for. We want to look at what kind of shapes we can see in the hand. There's a kind of pentagon shape on the back of the hand here. There are triangles where the fingers arch, like sort of shallow roofs. And what are these gaps in between? It curves round, and then that one's more of a triangle. And on these fingers, there's no real shape in between, but you've got interesting shapes at the top of the finger next to the finger. And then I want you to think, where are the darkest areas? Where are the darkest lines? So you've got some clear shadows. This line will be probably the most pronounced, and this line by the fingers. And because they're closer to you, you want them to pop out a bit, and so you can use a darker line to help them come to the front, because the darker the line, the more it's going to come towards you. And so the far left line is going to be one of the lighter lines you draw. And the little finger, you're going to draw lighter than you draw the index finger to help give that sense of depth. And then the last thing to think about, just looking at your hand, is what makes your hand distinctly yours? What's going to make this be a drawing of your hand and not anybody else's, not just a generic hand? So it might be that you've got freckles like me, or that you always wear a ring. What the shape of your fingers, are they slender? Are they really strong? What is it that you want to bring out in this drawing? Have you always liked your knuckles because they are kind of familiar to you or look like your family? It's a kind of family trait. So yeah, these are the things to think about. The shapes, light and dark, and what you want your drawing to really show. So now we are ready to make some marks. So the first step of drawing is we're going to do a light mark at the highest point. So whichever finger is sticking out the highest, you make a mark at the top of your page, and that's going to be the highest point. And then you do the same for the bottom of the hand where it meets the wrist. So I'll just do a mark there. And then we're going to do some points to say how wide the hand is, so we've got how long it is. So if we do a mark to decide where we want the hand to begin on your page, and then you can measure maybe from the middle of the back of your hand to where it comes to the edge of your hand on the other side, so at the bottom of the thumb, and lining it, taking that across in a sort of straight line. So you might want to do that line a bit, that mark a bit lower down. Get your measurement, carry it across. It doesn't have to be too accurate because you'll adjust as you go, but it's helpful to have some marks. And then you think about other wide points. This edge of your hand's come in a bit, but then this thumb is sticking out. So you can think, how far has that come in from the outer edge of your hand? And then do another line just to measure about how wide. I mean, this might seem quite complicated, but it's just doing some light marks at the start to sort of know where you're aiming with your drawing, what are the boundaries, and help you get a sense of the position of the drawing on the page and getting familiar with the shape of the hand. But yeah, just a few indicators to then help you draw. Now this next line is a bit more expressive. We're going to try and do this far left line. So tracing all the way from the wrist along the edge of the hand, along the little finger, dipping down and along the next fingers. So here goes. Starting off at the wrist. And for this I'm still using a light mark, and you can be quite angular with this and just sort of block it out in short straight lines. Dip along to that joint of the finger, along to the nail, down a bit, and up. And I've gone a bit higher than my line, so I might want to check it and adjust. So is that little finger kind of coming to the right point? Yeah, I'm more or less happy with that. What about this finger? There's a bit of a curve there, the next joint in the finger. Yeah, that's not bad. This one maybe comes out a little bit further. And at this point you can rub out some of the lines you don't want to include if that's helpful. Okay, so next step, I'm going to draw the shape of the back of the hand, and this will help me to then add the fingers, and they're going to be coming off at the right place and all hopefully relate to each other. So we've got this line already, so I'm going to follow it round, just a light mark, drawing an imaginary line that joins up the bottom of all your fingers. So maybe from the outer edge to the top of that index finger, and it can just be a light mark to kind of get the angle in. And then I'm going to draw a line that goes across the bottom of the index finger. Down in this little joint, down from this joint to the edge of the thumb there. So the thumb's going to start about halfway on that point. And then you can add in the rest of your wrist. Maybe from there, if that's the wrist, make some adjustments there. Rub out if you want. So I guess the key thing is, does the shape you've drawn make sense to you? How the wrists join the hand? Do you know where each finger starts? Okay, and so then from here we can start to draw in the rest of the fingers. So looking at this line we've already got, I can see that this finger goes just a little bit down, and then the knuckle goes over into the little finger, round a bit and down. So I'm going to try lightly sketching that. Again, you can keep it just doing these sort of straight angular lines for now if you want. Have you got the finger going at the right angle? And when you're happy with the mark, you can start to draw it in a bit darker. And then you can, moving on to the next finger, maybe we'll just sketch in where the nail comes, because that can be helpful. Drawing the next line, and again the main knuckle. And then how it joins the hand if you've got with the angle of the line changes. And you can see now, have I drawing a bit more of the knuckle detail? Have I made the finger too thick or too thin? The bridge and down on that knuckle. Here I've got a gap, so the things aren't overlapping. Draw a bit of that along that line. And it's easy to get the width of your fingers wrong, to make them too thick or too thin. So it's just about kind of maybe looking away, looking back at the drawing, really observing what shapes there are and how they relate to each other. Like, does the nail, is your nail half of the width of the finger from the angle you've got it at? And try not to think about what you think a finger should look like, but just draw the shapes in front of you, because it'll be a different angle to a flat hand if you've got it arched a bit like this. And then you can start by drawing the knuckle of the index finger. Again, you can rub out any wrong marks, although it can be a bit tricky doing that whilst you're keeping your other hand still. So yeah, my final finger here, I've got the gap goes to a very fine triangle there, the bobble round where my knuckle is. It's not that wide a gap still. You can again draw a bit of the knuckle in to help you realise how wide that finger is. Drawing segment by segment, and then finishing the top of that, maybe drawing in trying to work out the shape of that nail, keeping that round. Again, just checking, have I made the finger a bit too thin, a bit too wide? Is it getting a bit sausagey, or have I defined each section of the finger? And this bit where it goes from the finger to the hand is a really important line. So just do that bit by bit, working out the angle. And then next up I've got, that's a bit more like that, there's a little fold of skin there. Then I'm drawing in the gap with the thumb. And with the curve on the thumb, I can see I'm almost going to get that mark of remembering where that widest point is. So the widest point is where this edge of my nail here. So that can help you get that curve going in the right direction. And try and draw quite quickly here whilst you're just doing light marks and still working it out. You just draw quickly and instinctively, and you can see, and just stop and adjust as you go. So, and the more you put in, the more you'll be able to think, yeah, is that right? What do I have to adjust and move around? And that's the joy of drawing with pencil and starting off light, is that you can easily change any mistakes you've made and adjust it. So I've got the rough shape of my hand. I've probably gone quite quickly there, but you can pause this and keep going until you've got an initial drawing of all the four fingers and thumb and the hand shape. And at this point, it might not look quite right because, I mean, hands are really complicated to draw. So this is a good point to pause and do more looking and think, okay, let's try and make any corrections now. And at this point, you can start to draw a bit darker as you get more confident about where that outer line is going to be. And I'm just drawing in some more of the details on the finger, adding the ring I've got on there. It's quite nice to really focus on the shape of the knuckle. So a gentle arch. So yeah, just adding in a few more details and adjustments to make sure you're sort of happy with where you've got those lines, and checking again about the gaps in between fingers if you think you've got the right shapes there. Noticing if your fingers, the bottom of your fingers sort of I guess mine like bulge a little bit. And yeah, when you're happy that you know where a line is going, you start to draw that in a bit more confidently. Looking for each curve and line and how they relate to each other. So my knuckle here, it goes round and sort of straight. So getting that shallow curve into the straight mark there. And I can see all of the bottom of the nail goes up straight, and then it kind of curves around so I can only see half the top. And again, then on this line, a bit more of a curve out to where the joint is. Okay, so the next step is to add in some of the detail within the hand and looking at how your knuckles are. And you want to be a bit decide here how many marks you want to add in. What are the prominent marks in your hand? If you do too many lines, you can create a really wrinkly look, which might not reflect how your hand is. So I'm just drawing in some of the marks to indicate where my knuckles are. There's a bit of a line that goes from there. I've got a few freckles, so I'll just draw them in. This vein, a bit more prominent. And you can add in more of the wrinkles on your knuckles here. Again, just using how many lines you want to add so you don't overdo it. It's probably like the big ones on the thumb. Have a look at any of the lines you've got, and do you want to try and carefully rub a few out at this stage. And now the final stage now is just building in more detail with a bit of tone and shade, and I mean, this is a really fun bit, and you can keep adjusting as you go and checking the shape of your thumb. You can start to add some of those darker lines I was talking about at the beginning, so for the index finger and thumb, pressing down quite hard and building up that line. I'm trying to think that your fingers are round objects and sort of, I guess, almost sculpting it out. But yeah, just always keep in mind the 3D shape of what you're drawing. So just adding some where you want those dark lines to be. Looking at your oval drawing and thinking, is there anywhere I want a bit more detail in this? Are there any glaring mistakes which just look really wrong? And if you need a bit of a break, you want to shake your hand, you've now got a good guide of what position your hand was in from your drawing, so you can shake your hand, give it a bit of a wriggle and put it back in place, lining it up with your drawing. Adding more detail, but remembering that for these fingers that are far further away, pressing a bit more lightly and thinking again about where you thought the dark patches were, so these shadows. To the top of that ring, I've got a fine dark line. Don't think I quite made that finger long enough. Okay, now you can just leave it like that as a line drawing, or you might want to add some more toning and shading. And if you remember the hatching marks we made at the start, you can start to build some of them in. And again, to think about the angle of your line to reflect that it's a round shape, your finger. So you can do some small round marks and going up to that imaginary shadow line, or you can even sketch in where you want to draw the shadow until get that. So it's got a blob matching the knuckle on the next finger, and then just doing some diagonal lines in one direction. And then in any darker areas, adding small diagonal lines, pressing a bit harder in the other direction. You can really keep building that up. Practice doing very small and light marks in your cross hatching, and more on that finger. There's also a shadow on the bottom bit of this finger. That shadow turns into quite a dark line there. Doing more cross hatching. Maybe drawing some of the shadow on the table to help ground the drawing, and that may be a good idea to draw some horizontal lines, showing you that the surface is flat, and here maybe I'm even picking up some of the wood marks I can see on my table, and then just building up more lines in the areas where there are dark shadows. And you can be as neat or messy, you can sort of scribble in some of the shadow, or you can build up going close, holding your pencil, keeping it on the paper and just going back and forth, to build up a darker area. And the more shading and toning you do, you might have to then go back and make other areas darker. So what the lines that had been darkest you might want to now define again a bit more. Choose any final marks, any extra bits of shadow you want to bring into the hand. Maybe along the knuckle edges like I'm doing. A bit around this knuckle because that's quite a dark area. And at the top of the thumb there, just curving around the thumb. And again, round onto the nail. And you can keep going until you think you've captured your hand, or until you really need a break for your hand, the hand that you're drawing. And now I can see that I've added a bit more tone. This thumb looks a bit too thin and long for me, so I'm going to just draw that line in where I want it to come out until use my hands and use the edge of my rubber just to adjust that line. I might rub out some of those early marks that were just helping me to place the drawing along the right spots. Choose what lines you want to keep, what lines you want to get rid of here. And then just pulling away the rubber bits, putting my hand back for one last time, and finally just drawing back in any of those, some of those lines I rubbed out when I was doing some corrective work. Any final shadows and darker lines. So there we go. There, hopefully you've got a drawing of your hand that you're happy with, and you can move a hand and add a bit more final bits of tone. And any final corrections you want to do. I would suggest when you're drawing, if you rub out a line and then you want to draw it back in, to put your hand back in the position, or here I'm just drawing the thumb. And think, okay, going a bit slower. How do I want this line to go? Try not to overwork it or overthink it. So there we go, a picture of your hand, and hopefully it's got some of the features of your hand that you like or that make it distinctly your hand. And the more time you do it, the more practice you get, the easier it becomes. But it takes a lot of concentration and hopefully helps you just relax a bit and tune out of any other thoughts or worries you're having.